Welcome to the Epic Man podcast, where we let our curiosities and theories run wild and sometimes talk relevant news. I'm Josiah, and with me, my singular friend and singular co-host,
oh no,
Michael. It is only you and I today. We're alone once again. No Ben. Ben has dipped on us, as he usually does. I don't know. Maybe he had to go back to his own alien kind for a little bit. Maybe they brought him back and they had to give him a spanking or something, a stern talking to before they cast him back into the terrestrial realm. So yeah. We'll see. But all of that aside, Mike and I are here because we're always here for you guys. We're always here for you guys, ready to bring the podcast. Always.
Well, I mean, I may be eating right now, but yeah, always.
So this is the perfect time to ask you because obviously you have your mouth full of food. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm actually doing pretty good. It's been a day, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's been a week.
Oh, it's been something. Let me tell you.
I mean, the delicious burger that I made.
Ooh, made it yourself, huh? Nice.
Oh, no. Come on now.
Nice.
Papa Mike can cook.
Oh yeah. It's true. I mean, you know, he keeps bragging about these steaks that apparently he can make, but these things are more of a myth than anything because I've never seen any of these so-called amazing steaks that Mike can cook, and he keeps bragging about it. Well, but
we gotta keep the expectations high, you know.
I too can make great steaks.
Yeah. But I've had some of your food before.
But unlike Mike, I can invite him over tonight and prove it to him right now. Come have my steak, Mike, right now.
I don't like that you're inviting me over to eat your meat in the middle of
the night. So, this is actually a great time to talk about this because Ben isn't here. And honestly, it's nice talking about things without Ben around in some ways.
Oh, well, I mean, he's not going to hear this. So if we dog him, I mean, like, he doesn't listen to the podcast.
I mean, he doesn't listen to the podcast, so it's fine. It's fine. But last week, and this has been pretty much on my mind all week in a lot of ways, and that's why I really want to just jump right in and talk about this.
Yeah.
Last week, Mike and I, and Ben too, but, you know, Ben didn't want to be here, so that's fine.
No.
We went and saw a movie that just came out, and it's called The Green Knight.
Yes.
It came out in a very busy weekend because it was also the same weekend that Stillwater came out, and it was also the same weekend that Jungle Cruise came out. So it was a very, very busy weekend for The Green Knight. A lot of competition. But I have to say that The Green Knight is absolutely a movie that must be watched in cinema. So if you get a chance, you should go check it out because that movie is cinematically, even if you aren't like a fan of the story or whatever else, cinematically, it is an incredible film. The visuals, the colors, everything else is absolutely fantastic. And I was kind of blown away by it. I was kind of blown away by the movie. And I've been thinking, like I said, I've been thinking about this movie like nonstop. It's been wild, man. It's been wild. It's been a crazy, crazy time having this movie just lingering in the back of my mind. So we're going to talk about it a little bit. If you guys
I hated it.
If you guys
I'm just kidding.
If you guys aren't familiar with it or whatever, basically The Green Knight is based on the story of Gawain and the Green Knight, which is an Arthurian tale. So we're going to be talking about the movie and then we'll see where things go from there. But Michael, what are some of your thoughts about the film besides that you hated it?
I'm just kidding. I did not hate it. No, that movie, I went into this movie super skeptical. I was not excited. I was like, we'll see what happens with it. I mean, I don't know a ton about Dev Patel. So I was like, I've heard he's a good actor. A lot of people said it was phenomenal. The first 5 minutes of this movie, like the first 2 minutes, I was like, okay, what's going on here? Is this kind of like, without getting into spoiler territories, they kind of set up Garwin is how they pronounce it in this, or Gawain, whatever. But they kind of set his character up, and you're like, oh, okay, is this going to be like King Arthur and the Legend of the Sword kind of thing? Is this going to be like a modern thing or modern? No, this movie within the first 5 minutes hooked me. I loved it. It felt very epic. It felt very Arthurian. It felt very mythical, but it didn't ever feel big, like super big. It always felt kind of down to earth. It felt like I was watching a story that would be told by like my grandparent, like or something you'd read in a book. But it didn't feel like it was trying to be Lord of the Rings. It didn't feel like I was trying to be The Witcher. It didn't feel like I had to be edgy. It just was telling a story that had kind of more. It felt like I was watching like an Aesop's Fable, just with a phenomenal budget and like a phenomenal like cinematic eye. Like, dude, this movie is crazy. The colors, the way the camera movements, the cinematography in this is top notch.
The design is phenomenal.
The costumes, the settings, everything. The acting is amazing. I just was really impressed. Like the first 5 minutes of the movie, you really don't know what you're in for, but you can already kind of tell. And then the movie just keeps going, and I was impressed throughout it. It's kind of episodic in its in the way it goes, but that felt very Arthurian as well, because it was like, here's a tale, and here are the things that happen on this tale, and it didn't feel like it needed to try to make itself all like one big cohesive thing where everything tied into everything else. It was Garwin's tale, and he went on this quest to do this thing, and we got to see the end of that quest, and I was very happy with it.
Totally. I mean, I totally agree. I think that the thing I liked about this movie is that it didn't feel like a Hollywood film in a lot of ways, like what you typically get from Hollywood. It's made by A24, which is a studio that has produced and distributed a lot of other films as well that are very, like, the thing I like about their films is that they focus a lot on trying to tell unique stories that you don't typically get from Hollywood, and I really appreciate that. And The Green Knight was definitely the same way. It was a film that could have easily have been just another King Arthur Legend of the Sword type of film if they wanted to go that way with it and make it like a super action-packed, flashy CG fest type of movie, and they absolutely did not go that way at all. It honestly, it's the closest fantasy thing that I've seen that reminds me of like Lord of the Rings, with just how like down to earth and real a lot of the design of the film is, and how it just immerses you in that world of the film, and you actually feel like you're a part of it. And I really appreciated that about the film a lot. So
and it distinguishes itself really quickly as its own fantasy tale. And never, like I said, it doesn't try. It's not trying to be anything else. Like you said, it's not Hollywood trying to reinvent the wheel or copy somebody else's formula. It kind of does its own thing. I know that this was like A24's biggest movie yet. They put the most amount of money, into it that they have of any movie, and you can see that. There are a couple things, like there's a fox in the movie, which I won't go into detail on the fox, but there's a fox in the movie. The CGI on it is god awful. I mean, it's bad. Like, I mean, it's obviously a CGI fox, but it wasn't bad enough that it took away from the story. That is one thing I don't. I was like, that fox looks awful. But yeah, so that was part of it. That was like a little tiny thing. And then for me personally, and this is the thing that I mentioned to Josiah, cleaning off my camera here because I got a smudge. The thing I mentioned to Josiah is that I feel like the third act of this movie can be got a little muddy. I wouldn't say it was bad. It wasn't confusing. It didn't mess up anything, but it just it didn't stick the landing as well. Like, it was like if you watch somebody in the Olympics, because the Olympics are going on. It's topical, huh?
Good job.
And somebody did like an amazing somersault backflip, butt chug, twisty ass spin, and then landed, and they kind of stumbled a little bit, and you're like, oh, yeah. But you're like, you know what? A for effort, because you really knocked it out of the park with the trick. So that's kind of how it felt at the end. It like maybe stumbled a little bit, but like I don't know. I loved it.
I actually really liked the ending a lot.
I like the ending.
I like the ending the longer I think about it and dwell on it and stuff.
There's just a moment, and I express this without going into super big detail. It's that exposition. There's like a moment where somebody starts talking and giving this speech,
Yeah.
and it goes on a little bit too long and
Yep.
explains a little bit too much,
Yeah.
and then kind of resolves in a really weird way where you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like it, and then you're like, okay, cool, and then it resolves. It tries to tie a knot on the end of like a story hook, and it ends in kind of a weird, ambiguous kind of like, I don't, okay,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and then the very end of the movie is solid as heck.
Mm-hmm.
It went in a direction I didn't expect, but also did expect.
Yeah.
Like I was watching it and going, I hope they do this thing. But if they do this, it's still pretty good. It could end on this note and be good, but they went a step further than I expected, and that made it work.
Yeah.
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 Also, a standout for me, Sean Harris as King Arthur, which in the
Mhm.
movie he's just king, but
Yeah.
he's definitely King Arthur. Oh
Yep.
my gosh. He plays an old aging King Arthur, and this guy nailed it.
Yeah.
Holy
Exactly.
cow.
Yep.
He
Oh man.
like, yeah, he nailed an older, grizzled, like at the end of his life, King Arthur, and I was all for it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For real.
There's a scene where like you get to see him like give like a little bit of like a thing, like a speech kind of for himself, and it's really brief, but it just feels like King Arthur. You feel
Yeah, it's a really badass moment with him, and
Yeah.
it's so good. It's so good.
So good.
And it makes me actually feel like that he has like the history and the lore behind him, and I guess the legend behind him and stuff.
Yeah.
And I love that. There's a lot of really cool little Easter eggs in here if you're a fan of like any sort of like Arthurian tales or anything. There's a lot of interesting little Easter eggs and stuff in the film, and I think that you guys will appreciate that. And they don't really like, they don't like point out the Easter eggs like, guys, look who we have in this movie and stuff. Isn't that cool? You know, they just have them in there, and it's just such a natural part of the film. But anybody who knows like the tales about King Arthur and Excalibur and all that stuff, they'll see all these Easter eggs and they'll be able to point them out and stuff. So it's really cool. It's really, really cool. And it's just really been making me think a lot about that film and stuff. And just like I've been waiting for. I just love it when we get these types of films because they are so satisfying, and they just are such a breath of fresh air from the type of stuff that we usually get from Hollywood.
Yeah.
So it was good.
Yeah, and there's a thing too. What I expected, and I because I want to preface this because I don't know, I've seen different like responses and different takes, and like some critics like didn't like it and thought it was like too heady and kind of like it was too gaudy. Other critics really liked it because it was so artistic. And then I think like a general audience, I think it only has like a C+ on like Metacritic from audiences.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were expecting like Lord of the Rings fantasy or something.
Yeah.
Like what I wanted from this movie is to walk away from it feeling like I read an Aesop's fable. Like I wanted to walk away from it. Like this isn't St. George and the Dragon. This isn't like Arthur and Excalibur. This is like, it's a smaller story. I mean, it's a popular story, but it's not full of a ton of action or anything.
Right. Yeah.
And that could be expected. What I wanted at the end of the movie is to feel like somebody told me a tale, and that there was a lesson to be learned at the end of the tale. There absolutely is a lesson to be learned at the end of the tale, and it is not obvious, and it does not try to shove it in your face. This is the lesson if you didn't get it. It expresses itself it does exactly what cinema is supposed to do. It shows, it does not tell. And the only time that the only biggest detraction I have from the movie is when it feels like it's trying to tell me something versus show me something, because without that the speech that I said that felt expositional, it wouldn't change the movie. If it was half as long as it was, it wouldn't have affected anything of the movie. Like, I
mean, because you kind of got that message anyway if you were thinking through it and stuff, you know.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And so I just feel like it's disappointing, because I'm like, we need more movies like this in cinema. And for people to be like, well, I didn't get it, or like I heard some people say it was boring. And I'm like, well, what were you expecting? I mean, if you came in here expecting action and stuff, like that's you missed the point. There's not even a ton of action in the original story.
No, not at all. I mean, the film actually surprisingly it follows the story pretty faithfully for the most part. They make a couple like creative. They take some creative liberties and stuff,
Yeah.
but for the most part, it pretty much follows exactly with the storyline and stuff. And you know, they don't like, because if a typical Hollywood studio was making this movie, you know, at the very end they would have absolutely had made like some epic showdown between the Green Knight and Gawain and stuff, and they didn't do that in this
I
movie.
didn't. No.
So like, if you're going into it expecting a typical Hollywood film, then you're going to be disappointed. so yeah. But that's one of the things I loved so much about it, was that it wasn't what you typically get from Hollywood. So
yeah. Yep, absolutely.
So Mike,
yeah,
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you think that King Arthur was real? Is it all just a legend, or is there history? What do you think?
I don't. That's a really good question. I think that I don't think Arthur himself was real.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there are definitely people in history that have developed enough of a legend, and maybe just over time probably like have inspired that tale. Like, I'm sure that there is somebody out there, people out there that are like, hey,
yep,
this dude, like, you know, we're telling the story of this guy, and then over time it became, you know, this story of this like legendary king and stuff. So yes and no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of legends and stuff, you know, they have some inkling of truth that kind of sparks it. And I think the same is true with Arthur. There's a lot of interesting, like, I guess, theories that, like, there was this Roman centurion who was named Lucius Artorius Castus.
Yep.
I think is basically the historical basis for King Arthur in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So they have some interesting like inscriptions that were found in like some churches about him and stuff. One of them reads, "To the spirits of the departed." This was obviously in like Latin or whatever, but obviously they translated it. But it says here, "To the spirits of the departed, Lucius Artorius Cassus, for himself the centurion of the Legion 3 Gallica, also the centurion of the Legion 6 Ferrata, also the centurion of the Legion 2 Adiatrix, also the centurion of the Legion 5 Macedonia, also the primus pilus of the same, prepositus of the classis Micenesis, twice the prefect of the Legion 6 Victorous, the dux of the 3 British legions against armed men, he himself while alive, but this for himself and his family." So I don't understand any of that, but that's what it says.
You said a whole lot of words.
So that was found in a church, but then there's this one as well that they found, which says, translated, "Lucius Artorius Cassus, primus pilus of the Legion 5 Macedonia, prefect of the Legion 6 Victrix." So apparently this guy was a big deal, because they have like all these different inscriptions with him on him. Lucius Artorius Cassus, and a lot of people think that he was kind of like the beginning of the, I guess, the legend of King Arthur and stuff, because he was like a big deal in Britannica at that point. So yeah, that's where a lot of people think that where Arthur kind of originated and stuff.
That's fascinating.
So
it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I mean, even in that part, like, I don't know if you remember this story or not. This was like a couple years ago. It's 2019. Yeah, there was a person that, like, this girl, she was out like fishing or something with, and she found, like, maybe this isn't the same one. It doesn't. No, it was an archaeologist that found this one. Like 2019, they found a sword in a lake, in the middle of a lake, plunged like into a rock, and it was like a 14th century sword.
What?
Yeah,
I've never heard of this before.
It was in the Verbas River.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the sword was uncovered during excavation near the ruins of a medieval castle in the city of Svekaj. I'm not going to try to pronounce that correctly. It was found 36 feet underwater, embedded in solid rock.
What?
And they pulled it out of there. That's insane.
It's like
over by Bosnia.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
wow.
yeah,
That's
and
super fascinating.
so
Wow.
like they were like this kind of crazy, and it was 14th century sword.
Yeah.
Um, but then there was like a young that happened. Then there was also a young girl who found a few years ago. She found like a sword in like a lake. That isn't
Mhm.
it's not the same thing, but also this was 2001 that this was talked about in Tuscany. There's a sword called the Sword of Saint Galgano,
Mhm.
which was said to be plunged into a rock by a medieval knight, and it was an actual like knight. He basically like renounced war after like coming back from like a huge war, and he
Mhm.
plunged his like sword into like a giant stone, like just like hammered it into it, and
Really?
it like yeah,
Wow.
it's still there to this day. Like nobody ever got it out of there. But you know, you look
Yeah.
at like stories like that, and you hear you think like, oh wow, that's kind of like a really cool story. Like
Yeah.
you know, and you keep telling stories and you keep telling ideas and stuff, and eventually things kind of like blend, and you
Mhm.
know, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's super cool. That's really, really interesting.
yep,
Um, yeah, and then there's also like I mean, there's a lot of I guess ties. I mean, King Arthur really is like I guess the spirit of like medieval Great Britain and stuff in a lot of ways and stuff. Like
yeah,
he, you know, they had like apparently like there was Geoffrey of Monmouth who wrote the first life story of King Arthur, described his magic sword, Excalibur, his trusted knight Lancelot, Queen Guinevere, and the wizard Merlin. And he basically like made a book out of it in
wow,
1066 called The History of the Kings of Britain. So that's from 1066,
wow,
which is kind of insane.
that's nuts.
Yeah.
Wow,
So
crazy.
yeah. So that was like a long time ago, and he was already talking about like King Arthur and all of the crazy stuff about him. But he
Yeah.
said that he based the book on a lost Celtic manuscript, apparently,
Ooh.
that Joffrey used to have. Um, but he only ever really mentioned it. I mean, there never was any findings of the actual Celtic manuscript, but that was Joffrey's claim and stuff. So, so yeah, it's pretty cool. And
Yeah,
that like literally, that's like it was like from almost like 1,000 years ago and stuff.
that's crazy.
Yeah,
And that's the thing. Like some of these stories, like they're so crazy. But you know, I mean, there's um like the story of well, Gilgamesh, the legend of
yeah,
Gilgamesh, which is like one
yep.
of the oldest stories like of all time. You know, and then you have stories like um the story of wow,
Beowulf.
Beowulf. Yes,
Yeah,
that one. I
yeah,
mean, you know, some of these crazy stories, and you have to like think sometimes. Like, I mean, you know, there had to have been a basis for some of this. Like, you
yeah,
know, an idea of like a guy fighting a dragon. Like, did somebody just go like, I'm just gonna make up a story about a dragon? Okay,
yeah.
yeah, let's make it up. You know, or was
Right.
there like I don't know? Did this dude fight like a? Was there a
Yeah,
dinosaur somewhere that was still alive? I mean, I know we've talked about this before,
yeah, yeah.
but like,
Well,
it just begs the question. Like,
yeah.
you know, yeah,
I mean, you know, we only see the perspective of the world through what we see today and stuff.
yeah,
Like you have to think the world was completely different 1,000 years ago in
mm-hmm,
almost every way.
yeah,
And Beowulf was a story that was written even earlier than that. Like I think Beowulf was written like the 800s, I think. And then
yeah,
Gilgamesh was written even earlier than that. So
yeah,
like, you know, like these are stories that were written that somehow is crazy that have somehow, you know, managed to survive through all these centuries and stuff.
yeah,
And like, you know, the world was absolutely completely different back then,
yeah,
you know, socially, economically,
yeah,
everything. And you know, you have to wonder if there was like, who knows, like there could have been a lot of crazy stuff that was going on back then that, you know, really influenced these stories and stuff in a lot of ways. There could have
yeah,
been, you know, we talked about this, like we have talked about this before, but like there could have been dinosaurs back then that people saw roaming around and they were like, hey, that's those are dragons, you know, that's where
yeah,
the idea of dragons came from, you
yep,
know. Let's go prove ourselves to the king. Let's go freaking kill ourselves a dragon and stuff
yeah,
and do, you know, stuff
absolutely,
like that. So, you know,
yeah,
it's crazy, man. It's
it's
so fascinating to think just how like those people, when you're reading those types of stories and stuff, you're looking at the world through their perspective, and
yeah,
totally different than what we have today. It's so
Yeah.
interesting.
No, absolutely, like 100%. And that's the thing, like we don't know, and that's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I sometimes think that that's like the biggest fallacy too. Is like we don't know, and
Yeah.
so we'll make assumptions about like, okay, well, they couldn't have meant this, or they couldn't have meant that, like, because we don't have that today, or that's
Right.
not proven today. But we
Right.
don't know what those people were going through, and
Well,
I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm not, it's not even me trying to say, oh, these are definitely true things, but it's just like sometimes it's
Yeah.
really, it's like a weird, like dismissive thing to be like, no, that's not real, or no, that can't be a thing because, yeah.
I mean, because a lot of people, especially like before science even became really understood or became like advanced or whatever, they use like stories to try to like make sense of things and stuff.
Yeah.
And so like if you had like, giant dinosaurs, or taking some of the other examples like druids and stuff, like there's a lot of very interesting stories about druids and witchcraft and stuff, and that's actually probably where a lot of the inspiration of Merlin came from, was like druidism and stuff.
Yep.
And like they were doing crazy stuff, and you had like men running around in like wolf skins and bear skins, and like that's where a lot of the ideas of like werewolves came from and stuff. So you
Yeah.
have like all this stuff going on and all these crazy things that these people are doing, and it's like, well, this stuff is just like so crazy, we have to like create stories out of it in order to like make sense of it in a way and stuff. So it's
Oh yeah.
it's
No, absolutely. Well, and I mean, like, in the less interesting but kind of related thing, like there's the story of when The Rock did the movie, the Hercules movie.
yeah.
And they were like, oh, the Hydra was actually like a cult that was wearing like snake skin on their heads and stuff like that. So like that's
Yeah.
kind of, it's interesting in like
Yep.
real history. It's less interesting in stories and movies. Like I don't really care. I'm like, I want to see magic.
Yeah.
I want to see a giant lizard that like has multiple heads.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
like that kind of a thing, yeah. Like how do you explain history, or you explain it one way, and that's
Yeah.
actually like a known quantity too in people, is that like a lot of times stories will get bigger over time.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, yeah, like Beowulf wouldn't be as cool of a story if like they made the dragon at the end some like, I don't know. Well, I mean, like if they just like made the dragon at the end like a dinosaur that was just like sleeping on in a cave. Like
absolutely.
The dinosaur
Like,
probably wouldn't even like be that much of a threat. They're just like straight up just yoinked it, So
yeah, or it would be like less interesting if you found out like Grundle was like just a severely like he was like a dude with like a giant birth defect or something that made him extremely large.
Exactly.
He was also like deformed, and they're like, yeah, we gotta kill this deformed dude. Like it gets a lot less interesting when you're like, oh, or like, oh, I went and killed Grundle's mom, and it was like she's just some lady, crazy lady. He's like, you're a witch. Wow. Like the legend grows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's like I totally agree. I hate it, and we've talked about this before, but I hate it when, especially today, for some reason, like Hollywood continues to think that this is a great idea, but they continue to take a lot of these old stories and myths and legends, and they have to put like this weird spin of like, oh, it's a dream, or something like that, or it's not real, or something like that at the end. And it's like, no, just give us the actual story, like it has always been. Like, all these stories like Beowulf, they don't put a caveat at the end of the story where it's like, oh, this was all just Beowulf's dream. Like, like just tell us the story. Just tell us the story is obviously it's a famous story that has been around for centuries. People love this story. People have continued to read the story and study the story. Just give us the story, man.
Yeah,
like it's a successful story for a reason.
Yeah. Well, or you get like things like, and I mean, we're maybe slightly biased, but like, Prince of Egypt is like an amazing animated film that told like the story of Moses and like the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, dude, those movies are like grand scale and they try to tell a story, and whether they believed it or not, they tried to stick to like the source material as best as they possibly could. Tell like a cool story, and then you have like Exodus, Gods and Kings, and they're like, give Moses a sword, not a staff. That's lame. And then he like hits his head on a rock, and he's like, "Ooh!" And then like has a vision of like God because he was having a schizophrenic episode.
Exactly.
Smacked his head on a rock.
Tossing buckets of frogs around and stuff, and being like, "Here's the plague."
Yeah. You're like, "Oh dear." That's far less interesting than the story before, even if that was what happened. Like, yeah, no, it's a weird thing, and I don't know. It's nice to have like some mystery in the world. Like, it's kind of annoying sometimes to be like, I mean, like I don't go to movies to like hear nihilistic like explanations of like how the world works.
Yeah,
I like go to movies or you tell stories to like be entertained.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
D&D is popular not because they're like, wow, it's so realistic to like real life to play an elf and have like money problems and be struggling with debt and trying to pay your bills and like can't find a good job. But like you want to like go fight a dragon and not have to think about stuff, or like try to slay a monster, or try to, even if you get political in Game of Thrones with it, like you want to try to overthrow a king and like save a town, or I mean, like that stuff is interesting, and that's why we go see movies and go see entertainment. And it's like it's just a weird spot to like see how Hollywood sometimes is like, oh well, we should like express like, oh, do you like myth and story? Well, let's tell one that's like grounded in reality. Wouldn't that be cool? I'm like, not really. They're like, what if Batman was real and every time he fought somebody he broke his leg?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I broke my leg. And so like the rest of the movie is Batman, or he breaks his back and the rest of the movie is him sitting in a prison.
Yeah, right.
In a hole in the ground going, oh, my back hurts. And tell him, yeah.
And then some old guy's like, hey.
Punch surgery. You're healed.
You're all set.
Get out of here. Yep, your back's not broken. It was just a slip disc, and I can punch it back into place. Yep, that was a thing that happened.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It's like, yikes.
Well, I think that's what makes like even like I think Unbreakable is a really good example of that, because Unbreakable is a movie that kind of like asks a question the entire way through of like, is this guy actually a superhero or is he not?
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so fascinating in that movie. And they don't even answer at the end. Like you don't actually know if he's a superhero or not.
Nope.
That's what makes that movie so great, is that like at the end of the movie, M. Night Shyamalan doesn't like tell you, oh, by the way, he's not actually a superhero. He's just like a crazy guy who thinks he's a superhero and stuff. He doesn't give you that answer. He keeps it open. And then it gives us the ability as like the audience to be able to ask those questions ourselves and to be fascinated by that mystery element and stuff.
Yeah. So. Well, absolutely. Well, and then it's like even in that, like, to be honest, because I actually think the Unbreakable trilogy is actually like super underrated. But, and then you have like Split, which is like about like the evolution of like humanity and stuff, and that like maybe people that we think are crazy really aren't as crazy as we think. Like, so there's like that, and like being strong, like letting trauma make us stronger and not make us weaker, and like rob us of our like abilities. And then you have like the third movie, which spoilers, but it's been out for like years now if you haven't seen it yet. But so if you haven't seen the Unbreakable trilogy, Unbreakable, Split, Glass, like pause this and then come back to it after you watch Glass or the whole thing.
So good. Like
Glass, I kind of dig the whole narrative, like where you watch those first two movies and you saw what happened, and then all of a sudden they're like, then Shyamalan, the big twist to me was, did it really happen? I'm like, no, he wouldn't do that. And he's like, maybe it didn't. I don't know. Maybe these dudes are just crazy. It's only those three that are really going through it. And I kind of love at the end that then like the big twist is that the powers that be don't want people to believe in a world where there could be superheroes. Like, okay, so I'm gonna be honest here. This is a little confession time. Glass made me bawl like a baby in the very end of it because the concept, the theme itself. I'm not saying Glass was a perfect movie,
Sure.
but the theme itself of inspiring people, like being excellent and being as amazing as you can possibly be as a human being, and not limiting yourself because you think that like you should only be capable of this or that. Like, I mean, obviously, maybe in real life, people aren't being able to pick up cars or climb up walls and stuff, but to be like, don't limit yourself and believe that you can be more than what you actually are,
Mhm.
and that the world around you is trying to remind you or trying to tell you you can't be that, because if you really do excel, you'll make other people like inspire other people to excel as well.
Yeah.
You'll inspire other people to do great. And it reminds me of that quote, and it's like one of my favorite quotes like of all time, is that our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. It is that we are powerful beyond all measure. It's like I think it's anonymous, but they say that it's also attributed to a lady named Marianne Williamson. The whole quote is this, because I just kind of want to read this. One of my favorite.
Yeah, go for
Our
it.
deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond all measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our present automatically liberates others. Which, dude, I love that quote so much.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah,
And,
totally.
and I dig that. And that's sometimes what I feel like Hollywood is missing, is this that feeling of like the movies back in the day, like the original, like before I mean, like people were trying different stuff, but like you had movies that were like grounded in reality, like real people doing real stuff, romance movies and stuff. And they were like, but they were larger than life because they had musical numbers and everybody was dancing and having a good time. So it was like a better world, like a happier world.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also had movies like the original Frankenstein or Nosferatu, where people were trying like, what if the world like has scary stuff in it? And then you also, you know, eventually over time, like had superhero movies.
Yeah.
Like, I will give all the credit in the world to Richard Donner's Superman, because it was the first time we ever saw a man fly like that. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Like, that's the kind of stuff that Hollywood works on. The reason the MCU works is because we want to believe that the world is a better place full of people that are better than us, but that we can be inspired by. Like Captain America is supposed to be an inspiration, not a picture of us like, oh, I look in the mirror and I see myself as Captain America.
Exactly.
He's supposed to be like an ideal, like even in like Man of Steel. That's another thing. And the themes in Man of Steel are really awesome. Like giving the people an ideal to strive towards. That's awesome. That's like a great idea. And so the idea of like reading, the reason I like The Green Knight and coming back to that is because it felt like a story that couldn't happen to anybody. It felt like a myth like playing out before my eyes, and it wasn't trying to be like, what if this really happened in real life and what would it be like? The concept was grandiose enough to put forward a concept and an idea like that was wrapped in like a really, really pretty package. Which is what storytelling is supposed to be.
Well, The Green Knight was like a hero's journey. And you don't really get that very much anymore from Hollywood, like the hero's journey. And I think that is like, at the end of the day, that is like one of the most timeless stories that you can do. I mean, you know, that's Beowulf's story. That's the story of King Arthur. That's Gawain and the Green Knight. And Gawain, you know, in this movie, he's like really flawed and stuff, but that's part of his journey. That's actually like the most important part of his journey is him working through who he is as a person and what it means to be a knight. And
absolutely,
like, and I love that. I freaking love that.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so good.
It's not supposed to the answer isn't supposed to be given to us. We're supposed to come to that answer on our own, because the most powerful messages you can learn from something is not being told this is how you're supposed to think about this, which Hollywood does a lot now. It's supposed to be, what do you think about this concept or this idea? And then you go, what do I think about that? And now you are actively engaging your brain to come to a conclusion about something. and then you walk away with some like an idea or a concept, and that's what you're supposed to have. Like that's supposed to be a thing. Like I'm gonna like even a breakdown, like a good breakdown. Like if you watch Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and then watch Ant-Man and the Wasp, what do you walk away with Ant-Man and the Wasp? What lesson did you learn?
Right.
Be nice to people that are stuck between dimensions. Like,
yeah.
you know,
Right.
I mean, there are concepts of like not giving up and stuff in that movie, but like really, you know, but then you watch like Guardians of the Galaxy, and the idea being given there is that it's your family doesn't always have to be your blood relatives. Like you can grow up and have a bad family life or a bad home life, and still like the real family is the people around you that love you and accept you for who you are. Like just like the first movie is actually about like overcoming grief and pain, you know, like and not letting it define you or break you as a human being. Like there's some really deep themes like actually going on, which is why those movies are like considered one of the best ones. You know, or if you really want to like even simple stories, like the reason like Captain America, specifically the Winter Soldier, because that one was the most popular I think of the Captain America movies, is because like we're watching Captain America like battle the system and not give in and not let himself lose hope in the world around him, like which is like a great theme. Like it's a great idea, you know, like it's a simple idea, but it's inspires us to like, I don't want to give up either. I don't want to like lose that part of myself. Like that's great storytelling. And not great storytelling is having a hero that never goes through anything and never struggles with a single problem and then doesn't inspire anybody around them. That's the thing. You can tell a great Superman. You can tell a Superman story where really like we know Superman's invincible and isn't going to struggle if the theme that he's expressing or the thing that he's running into is to inspire people. I kind of like Henry Cavill's deconstruction of Superman and like that he's struggling with his place in the world, even though he's the most powerful being, and makes us question our place in the world. That it was kind of supposed to be a handholdy thing of like, we're supposed to learn with him, not he's supposed to inspire us, because Christopher Reeve's Superman absolutely is supposed to inspire us as as people. Henry Cavill Superman is supposed to help, like we're supposed to go on this journey with him of like, if this man is questioning his place in the world and he's like a god amongst men, then what is our place in this world? What does it mean to really like be a hero if like you just are born like that, and then no, like, can anybody be a hero? And it's like, no, like he had to choose to be a hero for no other reason than he had to choose it. Like he had to make that decision for himself. So I kind of like, you know, like there's always
because we see kind of like I guess the other side of that in a way with like movies like Hancock and stuff, you know, where like, you know, just because you have assets doesn't make you a hero, you know. And like you could easily apply that to like real world situations and stuff too, like like people can have all sorts of different assets that they could use that makes them powerful and stuff. But it's not really about having the assets that makes you a hero or not. It's about how you use them. And so, you know, Hancock is kind of another, I guess juxtaposition about that and stuff a little bit. Compared to like Superman. So, and
it's just, I don't know, man. I just miss having questions and being inspired, and also just having some mysteries on the world. Mysteries are great. Like mysteries are awesome. It makes the world interesting. I don't want to have answers to everything unless those answers make me appreciate the world more. What doesn't make me appreciate the world more is watching Hercules not actually be Hercules. What doesn't make me like or be like inspired by the world more is watching a movie where like the hero is actually kind of an asshole. He's not really a hero because like, and he never changes, and because that's how bad the world is. It's like, cool, the world sucks, congratulations. Like,
and that, I mean, Hollywood loves to just wallow in that nihilism and stuff. Like they
well,
they love it. So
I think it's a problem. I think a lot of times is like, and our generation has been like accused of being the most nihilistic generation at times, and I think part of that is because like, I mean, we're constantly being sold like a bill of goods on even the movies that we watch. Like we grew up at the tail end of like the anti-hero like thing. Like, we grew up in the anti-hero story, like in the 90s and stuff. Everybody was an anti-hero. Everybody was, you know, jaded and cynical about the world, and everything was raw, and everybody was wearing leather jackets and shooting people. And they're like, "Hey, man, you pushed my daughter in the supermarket. Time to die, mother effer." And you're like, "Yeah," you know, and stuff like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I mean,
but like,
yeah. I mean, if you're already being told basically from, you know, the earliest moment of your life that all you are is just basically just a random lucky cluster of cells, and that's all that you are in life, and there's not really any purpose, there's nothing to work towards, there's nothing, you know. When you have that type of mindset, that's obviously going to affect everything from like the movies you make to you know, everything, you know. So it completely affects everything in our culture right now.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and it's funny to me because like some of the best creatives out there are people that actually grew up in a world where like that actually read comic books and were like, I was inspired by these, or like these made me like happy as a kid, or like I remember playing like pretend as a kid and growing up doing, like, you know, you can see sometimes like where like something went wrong, you know. And it's like frustrating to me now because like one of the things I notice a lot of times in Hollywood, because superheroes are so popular, is like everybody goes, well, I used to read comics all the time as a kid, and that makes me qualified to be a superhero. I'm like, no, it's what it did for you. Reading comic books. What did reading Spider-Man actually do for you? Not, I read these, so I'm qualified to talk about this thing or write about this thing. You know, like that doesn't mean anything. Like anybody can read it. I could literally like be, if my fat ass got in shape, like, and I got picked to be the next Superman, I could be like, oh, I've read so many Superman comics. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, like, why? Why do you want to be Superman? Like, listen, like a perfect example of like somebody that like gave a crap about a character and really like went it all in. Like the reason Geralt of Rivia works with Henry Cavill is because the dude wanted to be that character and like wanted to express it. It wasn't a thing of like, oh yeah, well I went and played The Witcher to really learn this role. He was like, dude, I love this character. I want to do this character justice. You know, I learned about this character and learned why this character is an inspiration to people. Not, oh, this character is such an inspiration, so I'm really honored to play this character. I mean, you can do that. It's not like that's a bad thing. I mean, but you can just tell the difference a lot of times. Oh yeah, you know. Yeah,
exactly.
So I don't know, man.
I think it's really cool.
It is really cool.
I mean, even like you know, and this is kind of a little bit of a muddier area, I guess, but you know, I've been seeing a lot of, you know, criticisms out there about like even like going back to Green Knight with Dev Patel playing Gawain, and Dev Patel is not a white northern European dude. And people have been whining and complaining about that, but at the end of the day, you know, and we've talked about this so much and stuff, you know, it's about who is qualified for that role, you know, and that's how we should be looking at everything. You know, it shouldn't be, that's what they don't do in Hollywood. They don't look at who's qualified for the role. Typically they usually base everything on your skin color, or, you know, the type of people you sleep with, or whatever else and stuff. Those are your qualifications. It's not, can you do an excellent job representing this character and bringing this character to the screen in a way that can connect with the audience. And Dev Patel absolutely nailed that as Gawain. He absolutely just knocked it out of the park playing Gawain. And I watching the movie, I never sat there and was like, oh, I can't really get into this because he's not white. Or moment.
Oh, this is obviously like a race swap character. No, there was none of that. Like it was absolutely,
because he was great in that role. He was perfect for Gawain. He carried that story, that character arc throughout the entire movie, and you felt like he was Gawain.
Absolutely. And not once did they mention his skin color. Not once did they try to, there's no like woman strong moment. There's no like, there's no moment in there where it feels like they're trying to pander to anybody or reconstruct an idea
Yeah.
or revise a concept to like there never once is like, well, remember, like women are mistreated back in like Middle Ages. It's like no, none of that. Or
Yeah.
well, because of your skin color you're going to be like, no, none of that.
Yeah.
He just did a great job. And like,
Yeah. And
he
David
deserves-
Lowry, you know, trying to find the person to play Gawain, he never said, and in all the interviews that I've seen of him and stuff, he
Yeah.
never talks about the fact I needed an Indian guy to play this role.
Nope.
He talked about how he wanted to find the best person for the role.
Yep.
Dev Patel. He auditioned, he delivered, and he got the job. And you know, we've talked about this kind of a little bit in some of our past episodes, especially like our Black Superman episode, where we
Yeah.
kind of talked about, I guess, the opposite side of that with,
Yeah.
you know, J.J. Abrams and everyone else being like, all right, we need a Black Superman.
Yep.
And that is the most important thing in bringing that character. That is the selling point for that character. That is what they're using to market that character. He's Black.
Yep.
They didn't use Dev Patel skin color as the selling point or the marketing for this movie at all.
Well, and the fact is, well, and yeah, absolutely. And the fact is, like, there are certain roles like you can cast anybody for, and
Sure.
it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Like if you decided to gender swap like Gawain and make him a female and stuff like that, like then it's kind of, to me, then it's kind of murky because it changes the core of like the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now you're telling the story and you're going, well, he's a female, so how does a female act in this world, and how does she, you know, and all the whatever.
Well, there's a lot more differences between skin color and who, you know, your reproductive system and stuff.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And so like if you cast a movie and a character is traditionally, because you saw it in your head, white or whatever,
Yeah.
like that's different than saying like, well, like we cast a Black person as Superman because the guy came in and nailed it and embodied what we wanted as Superman.
Yeah, exactly.
That to me is different than, well, we're going to cast a Black Superman because the character that he's playing is a Black Superman.
Yeah.
Like there is a difference. There really is.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean,
absolutely.
like if to me, if you wanted to, like, if tomorrow they were like, hey, I don't know, freaking the guy that was in Tenet, I can't remember his name right off the bat now.
Yeah, I don't remember his
He's
name.
a phenomenal actor. Anyways,
Yeah.
we cast him as Bruce Wayne in the next Batman movie. I probably wouldn't bat an eye because the guy's a phenomenal actor. Now, if you were like, we went out of our way to pick a man of color to cast as Batman because we want to change the world, or we think it's time to have a Black Batman, then that tells me that you did not care about who the best actor was for the job. Tells me that you were focused on, can we get somebody with the right skin color to fill this role so we feel good about ourselves? There is a difference. You can cast, I mean, and the other part of it is we already had a Superman that everybody liked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
There was no reason.
Yeah,
absolutely
great. You know, and I mean, Nick Fury's a great example of that. You know, we had Samuel L. Jackson cast in that role. I think he has done a phenomenal job as Nick Fury and stuff.
Yep.
And another great example is like, let's say that you know, Daniel Craig retires from James Bond. They're looking for the next James Bond. Let's say Idris Elba. You know, he gets the role and stuff. But if it would obviously be different if they were like, we're trying to find the next great James Bond to carry that on versus we need a Black James Bond and stuff. You know, Idris Elba, he would be great as James Bond. He'd be fantastic. But there's also a difference between that and them doing like a female James Bond, like, because that's something that they've been kind of toying with too, is doing like a female James Bond and stuff. That would completely change everything about that character if they did that. That wouldn't be James Bond. Like it just wouldn't.
No,
you can't personify who James Bond is by making that character female and stuff.
Yep.
If you want to create like try to create like the iconic female character that is going to be kind of the action star in that way and stuff that isn't James Bond, I'm go for it. You know, do it. Yeah, but absolutely. Just, you know, ripping off of James Bond and trying to change who he is into basically a female character just doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing too. And the other part of it is too, it's detrimental to character to say like, you know, because I've heard, so like on the other side of the coin is and I'm shouting out to him because we are affiliated a little bit with Geeks and Gamers and stuff. So if you don't, you know, but Young Ripa is like really big about not wanting that there are plenty of good black characters out there that could also have their own movies, could also be used for like original characters and stuff. But I think that that's all part of it. Like it should be too. Like you shouldn't have to make Captain America black to get a black character popular.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to do that. Like that's also ridiculous.
I don't think you need to, but
you don't need to. Yeah. But like, you know, I mean,
but Hollywood thinks they need to.
The Hollywood thinks they need to. Because here's the thing, like, no, I don't think there would be anybody okay with casting Blade as like a white person. Yeah, but that's because there's like a weird feeling about that because like you kind of are like looking at the side you're looking at it like you wouldn't cast Black Panther as a white guy because he's an African character.
Mm-hmm. You know? Exactly. I think when there's like obviously geographical things, you know, I think that can play into things for sure. But yeah. So I don't know. It's like weird. It's a weird ground. It's a weird ground to do that with. And the fact is, I think that Hollywood's handling it worse than they ever have because they're making it a point to say we're going out of our way to do this casting specifically so that we can feel good about ourselves. Yeah. Like, you know, a good example of this, and this is something I know you didn't watch. I know you didn't see this coming. Amazon is doing their own Cinderella. What?
And listen, I don't know who the actress is. I don't know who she is. I think her name is Camilla Cabello or whatever. They cast her Cinderella. I'm like, okay, not really a problem, but like, it's very diverse cast, which once again, not really a problem, but my favorite part of the whole thing was that they cast a man as the fairy godmother. But it's not the fairy godmother. It's just the what was it, like a fairy god person is what he called himself. But he wears dresses, so it's okay because he wears a dress. But I'm like, so was the qualification we have to cast a gay black man that wears dresses in order to like diversify the character? Because Amazon has already set the precedent that they're not casting based on ideas or unique interpretations or anything or best person to play the role. They're casting because they want diversity. Yeah, that's what they said that they wanted. You know, like a perfect. Here's a really good example of perfect casting that doesn't require you to. That's perfect diversity casting. The new Little Mermaid is coming out. Everybody was frustrated because they cast, you know, a black Ariel or a Hispanic Ariel, whatever, you know, and Halle Berry is one of the mermaids in it, and blah, blah, blah. They cast Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. And I'm like, Ursula's a dude. Like, Ursula talks like a man. She's got like a deep, raspy man voice. Like, literally, you could have cast John Travolta like you did in Hairspray. Like, or like, there's a good example of like, you can like straight up cast like anybody like really in that role, and they picked like Melissa McCarthy. Yeah. Yep. I was like, really? Oh, like that was your decision, you know? Like
Melissa McCarthy. But then on the other side of things, here's on the other side of things. Then when they cast Aladdin, they're like, well, we need only Middle Eastern characters. Which I mean, I get the area and all that stuff like that. But then you cast like a white chick as like the assistant to Jasmine. Yeah, right. You cast some like white lady. I'm like, where did she come from? Like, she's the only like white person in this cast. What is happening here? Mm-hmm. Like, and then you didn't even cast like a good like. Listen, I don't want to rip on actors, but like the guy that played Jafar was awful. Oh yeah. Oh dude, he was awful. Terrible. Yeah. He's just not Jafar at all. He's not Jafar at all. Oh. Like, come on. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, even there, like, you know, okay, all right, you want to cast because of the area and everything like that. Awesome. You want to do geographic locations and all that stuff, which didn't matter before, but matters now, you know, then do so. But like, actually cast good actors. Don't just cast people because that's the skin color and they're supposed to be the right skin color for the job. Yeah. Because that's definitely what it felt like. Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep. Totally.
Yep.
Yeah, so Hollywood completely doesn't understand that at all, and it's weird because they kind of like it really does feel like that they, in a lot of ways, don't think that minorities are adequate in creating new franchises and stuff.
Yeah.
And they keep trying, like even with like trying to create like the female John Wick and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they literally have tried that so many freaking times,
So
and
many
now
times.
they literally just came out with the trailer today for a new movie that's basically a similar thing once again called Kate or something like that, and people are just crapping all over the trailer, rightfully so because it looks awful. But they keep on being like, "Oh, look, it's John Wick, but it's a female, 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 and female."
John Wick. Isn't that
They
cool?
they literally have to try to remind you throughout the entire movie, female. Look, it's a woman. Look, guys, it's a woman. Instead of just being like, this is a great character. Watch what we do. Watch what we create in her arc and stuff. We created an interesting character. They don't do that with these female John Wick spinoff or like ripoffs or whatever and stuff.
They have to remind you that they're women and that these women are really strong and powerful. Exactly. Instead of just going, "Hey, we told like a really good movie, a really good story, and like I hope you enjoy it."
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Like, go watch some. What's weird to me, like go watch some of Angelina Jolie. Like go watch Salt.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's not a perfect movie, but there are a lot of not perfect action movies. But like, she kicks all sorts of ass in that movie, and it doesn't try to remind you, don't forget she's a woman.
Yep. Yep.
Did you forget? Or like the newest one, the one where she's out running the fire.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I love that movie, dude. Such a great movie, man.
Boom, kick-ass female, and you never once needed to remind everybody, don't forget.
Yep.
Don't forget, by the way.
Yeah.
Or like go watch like Blade Runner 2049. I know she's a villain, but like was it Joy? I think her name was.
It was like, I think, yeah,
the replicant that worked for
Joy.
Yeah. She's like a total badass, and she's brutal and she's raw. She never once tries to act like a man. She never once tries to remind anybody, well, I'm stronger because I have a vagina. It's like, no, she's just a kick-ass female, and yeah, she gets choked to death by Ryan Gosling, but she's also a villain.
Yeah, exactly.
Ryan Gosling's character was the bad guy and she was the good guy.
Yeah.
Throwing down, you know what? You know, replicants are strong. We watched them kick Harrison Ford's ass in the first movie. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a way to do this, people.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult.
No,
it's really not. It's called telling a good story.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, we always go back to this example, right? Ripley, Aliens, perfect example. She absolutely carried that franchise. It's a super popular franchise.
Yep.
So it can be done. It can be done.
Listen, Beatrix Kiddo, The Woman, The Bride, Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2.
Yeah.
One of the most badass females of all time. Amazing fight choreography. Uma Thurman killed it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. You want to hear a fun little story? This is a fun little snippet story I'm going to give you.
Sure.
I just watched, if you haven't watched this, shout out to Joe Rogan. Maybe one day he'll be on our podcast. But he had Quentin Tarantino on his podcast, and they were talking about Uma Thurman. And he talked about, hey, you know, at one point he was going to cast Uma Thurman, and she got pregnant. And they were like, oh, well, you better cast somebody else because she's pregnant, so she's not going to be able to do the movie. And he said, if you write a movie and you're going to cast Clint Eastwood, and he says, sorry, I like broke my leg, or it was something along those lines, where he wasn't available for like a couple months or a few or whatever. You don't just go, we'll just find somebody else.
Yeah.
It's Clint fucking Eastwood.
Yeah, exactly.
He said the same thing. He goes, I wanted Uma Thurman. She was who I wrote the role for. And when she said she was pregnant, I waited.
Yeah.
And they waited. And I don't think there was anybody else that they could have cast that did as well a job.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, she was that character. Absolutely,
she was that character.
Yeah,
but right there, that shows you that it's not about him going, well, you know, I just went and got a woman because I had. He said, I knew that this person was the person I needed, and I gave her the respect of saying, you know what, if you are a man, I would have waited. You're a woman, I'm gonna wait too, because it's not about me going, well, respect women. It's about she's the best one for the role, and I'm giving it to her.
Yep.
Quentin Tarantino, who's you know, sexist because Margot Robbie didn't have enough speaking roles in his last movie.
Right, exactly.
Even though she was like, why would I talk to myself? I'm alone the whole movie.
Yeah. Which is crazy because even in the story of her character and stuff, what's her character's name? Tate?
Sharon Tate. Yep.
Sharon Tate. Even in that, you know, Quentin Tarantino completely rewrites that legacy of, you know, the murders,
Manson murders,
Manson murders and stuff.
Yeah, he saved her life.
Exactly. And completely, in a way, kind of redoes her legacy. And people still complain and bitch at Quentin Tarantino and call him sexist because she doesn't talk.
She doesn't talk enough. I mean, the feet thing's a little weird, but you know what? Hey, man.
Hey, you know, Margot Robbie's feet. Come on, you know.
Nope. Listen,
so, with that being said,
what a way to end it. Margot Robbie's feet. You know, come on.
Thank you everyone for coming out. This was an amazing episode. We had some incredible conversations in this episode. We hope that you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like, subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Please give us a review if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform. We really do appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.